The fusion reactor hummed its familiar song, a deep thrumming that James Chen had learned to love during his 3 years aboard the Wandering Star. He'd been running diagnostics for 6 hours straight, his uniform shirt discarded somewhere near the coolant pipes, leaving him in just his regulation undershirt and cargo pants. The reactor room was always too warm, even with the environmental controls working overtime. He didn't hear her enter. Princess Aliana of the Zephyrian Empire had that way about her, moving like starlight through corridors, silent despite her 7-foot frame and the crown of crystalline horns that marked her royal bloodline. Chief Engineer Chen, her melodic voice called out, accent lilting over the consonants in that way that made his name sound like poetry. James nearly dropped his plasma wrench. He spun around, then froze completely. The princess stood between 2 massive reactor columns, bathed in the blue glow of contained fusion fire. She wore nothing but his shirt, the uniform shirt he'd been looking for, and it hung on her like a dress, stopping mid-thigh. Her silver skin seemed to absorb the reactor's light and reflect it back in patterns that shifted with her breathing. Her 4 eyes, arranged in an elegant arc across her forehead, all focused on him with an intensity that made the reactor's heat feel cold by comparison. "Your Highness," James managed, his throat suddenly dry. "What are you? That's my you can't be in here without proper clearance." "I have diplomatic immunity on this vessel," Aliana said, taking a step closer. Her bare feet made no sound on the metal grating. "And you've been avoiding me for 3 weeks, 2 days, and approximately 14 hours. James backed up until his shoulders hit the reactor housing. "I haven't been avoiding you. I've been working." "Lie," she said simply, moving closer still. His shirt shifted as she walked, and he forced himself to look at her face. All 4 of her eyes. That was the professional thing to do. "Ever since the incident at the Kronos Station peace talks, you've taken every extra shift available. You sleep in the engine room. You eat ration bars instead of coming to the mess hall." The incident. James felt heat rising in his face that had nothing to do with the reactor. The incident where he'd had perhaps 3 glasses too many of Andromedan wine and told the princess exactly what he thought about her negotiation tactics. Her stubborn refusal to consider human emotions valid, and her complete inability to understand why her arranged marriage to the warlord of Proxima was a terrible idea. He'd also called her the most magnificent being he'd ever met and said that any universe where she married that tyrant was a universe he wanted no part of. Then he'd passed out in the garden. "I apologized for that," James said. "I was drunk. I was out of line. You're royalty, and I'm just the man who rebuilt this ship's quantum drive from scrap in under 48 hours. Aliana interrupted. "Just the man who saved 600 lives when the Krelix attacked. Just the man who solved a mathematical equation that 3 of the galaxy's greatest minds couldn't crack." She was close enough now that he could see the bioluminescent patterns tracing along her collarbones, disappearing beneath his shirt collar. "Just the man who called me magnificent." "Your Highness Aliana," she corrected. "You used my name that night. 3 times, actually. I kept count." James's brain was short-circuiting worse than the port thrusters had last month. "Why are you here? Why are you wearing my shirt?" Aliana tilted her head, all 4 eyes blinking in sequencer. Gesture he'd learned meant she was being deliberately provocative. "Because you humans seem to find clothing significant. There are 17 different holonovals in the ship's database where one romantic partner wears the other's shirt. The context suggests it's intimate, possessive, a declaration. A declaration of what? Do you want me now?" she asked, and her voice was soft, vulnerable in a way he'd never heard from the imperious princess who commanded delegations and negotiated treaties. Or were those just the words of intoxication? "Because I broke my betrothal contract 3 weeks ago, I've abdicated my claim to the Zephyrian throne. I have diplomatic asylum on this ship until we reach the outer reaches, and after that, I have nothing but my name and whatever future I choose to build." James stared at her. "You what?" "I chose myself," Aliana said. "Or perhaps I chose the possibility of something I didn't know I wanted until a brilliant, frustrating, passionate human engineer shouted it at me in a garden. But I need to know if you meant it, James. Because I'm standing here in your shirt in the warmest room on this ship, making myself vulnerable in every way my culture understands. Asking you directly since apparently that's how humans prefer to communicate." The reactor pulsed, a surge. In the magnetic containment that James automatically adjusted with one hand on the nearest panel, not breaking eye contact. "You gave up your throne. It was a cage made of responsibility and tradition. For me, for the possibility of me," she corrected. "The person I might be without the crown, the person who might deserve someone who sees me as magnificent rather than just useful." Her hand reached out, fingers trembling slightly, another gesture of vulnerability from a species that prided itself on emotional control. But I would very much like to explore the possibility of us. James caught her hand. Her skin was warm, warmer than he expected, and energy seemed to dance where they touched. I'm still just an engineer. And I'm no longer a princess, Aliana said. I'm just a woman asking a question. You're still magnificent, James said, and pulled her closer. That part wasn't the wine talking. She smiled, a very human expression. She'd learnt during her time on the ship, and it transformed her face into something that made the fusion reactor's light seem dim. Then show me, James Chen. Show me what humans do when they want each other. Your culture has all those holonovels about it. I've done extensive research. James laughed, the sound echoing off the reactor housing. You researched human courtship? I'm very thorough, she said primly, but her eyes were glowing with something that looked remarkably like mischief. Though I admit the mechanics are somewhat confusing. You only have 2 eyes. How do you convey compound emotions? We improvise, James said, and kissed her. She made a sound of surprise that turned into something else entirely, something that harmonized with the reactor's hum. Her arms wrapped around him, and she was strong, stronger than humans, but gentle, learning, adapting. When they broke apart, all 4 of her eyes were wide. That's effective, she breathed. We're very big on direct communication, James said, grinning. I should return your shirt, Aliana said, but made no move to do so. Keep it, James told her. Looks better on you anyway. The reactor surged again, and this time James ignored it, letting the automated systems handle the adjustment. He had something far more important demanding his attention, a former princess in his shirt, looking at him like he'd hung the stars themselves, asking if he wanted her. For the record, he said, the answer is yes. Emphatically, completely, yes. Aliana's smile could have powered the ship without the reactor. Good, she said, because I want you to. Even if you're terrible at avoiding people you have feelings for, I'll work on that, James promised. Don't, she said, pulling him closer again. I find your emotional honesty refreshing, even when it's inconvenient. The fusion reactor hummed around them, containing the power of a small star, but James thought, the real miracle was this, a princess who gave up everything, wearing his shirt like a declaration, choosing possibility over certainty, and him, choosing to stop running from the most magnificent being he'd ever met.